Hi folks, in this video let's take a look at lesson 3, parameters and return practice, and let's take a deep dive into bubble 9. Quite a few people have asked questions about this lesson, and I think it's absolutely worth looking at and taking a better look at it. I also think that the instructions are a little bit unclear, so let's take a look. We'll read the instructions and then we'll look at one way to solve this problem. It's the way that I am going to do it. Yours might be slightly different, but that's no problem, but at least I'm giving you something to start with. So here we go. It says, this app allows the user to select a type of Netflix installment, movie or TV show, and a rating from 2 different drop-downs. The recommendations based on the inputs are displayed. Do this. Rewrite the search type list function to integrate parameters so that fewer global variables are necessary. Okay, what's a global variable? Global variables are variables that are declared outside of any function or event. They are usually placed at the top of your code so that you can see them here. Local variables are variables that we declare inside a function. So for example, here on line 15, var filtered titles equals, this is a local variable, and its values are not available outside of the function. A couple of things that are interesting about that. Let's take a look at the watchers as we're looking at this code. Let's look at type input and let's look at filtered titles. Okay, so let's run the code. TV show, TVG, pick. Did you notice that the list of filtered titles flashed up and then went away? See how it says not available? That's because it was only available, this variable only existed while this function was running. It doesn't exist anywhere else. So if I tried to print that out somewhere using console.log, I wouldn't be able to do it. And sometimes you want your variable to be local inside a particular process. Our job here is to add parameters to this function search type list. Right now it's working perfectly fine without parameters. But as I mentioned in an earlier video, if you wanted to share a function with another coder, if you simply want to make your code a little bit neater, using a parameter here is going to help both of those processes. So let's take a look at this function, search type list. We have a variable filtered titles. I'm going to go ahead and delete var because it wasn't initially a local variable. I just did that for our purposes. So filtered titles, we're setting it to blank. We're looping through the title list, and we're going to check if the type input is equal to type list I, so equal to the item that we're looking at that moment, and does the rating input that the user input equal the rating for that particular item, item I. If it does, we're going to append that particular title to the filtered titles list. Then we're going to create an output, and we're going to say the following plus the type output, plus the type input are rated, and then we'll put in the rating there. And you can see where this happens over here. The following TV shows are rated TVG. Then we are going to go through a loop 5 times, starting with 0 and ending as long as the variable k is less than 5. We're going to have index equal a random number, and then we're going to output a number and the name of the film. Then last but not least, we're going to take the output variable and we're going to use it to set the text. So what are the pieces of information that this function needs in order to work? Well, if we look at the app itself, we can see what are the variables that the user inputs. Well, the user is going to input type and rating. So those are probably our variables that the program needs. And those are going to be what we send into this function. So if you look here on event that the button is clicked, it's going to take the variable type input and get the data from the drop down. Same for rating input. And then we run the type list function. All we really need to do here is, in these parentheses, we need to name our parameters. So the parameters we're looking for are type input and rating input. Okay. Then when we run this function, in these parameters right here, okay, this block that runs the function, in between those parentheses right there, we want to paste our variables, and our variables happen to match these variables here. So we're going to get the text from these for these variables from the drop downs, and then we're going to run the function. We're going to call the function using those two variables as our input. By the way, a little vocabulary word, when we call the function and we put some data in here in these parentheses, this is called the argument. The argument is the data that you actually send into the function when you run it. This here is the information that the function needs to run. That's parameters. Parameters are just simply what information does this function need to run. I'm going to cross my fingers and I am going to see if this thing is going to run. So let's give it a try. Let's pick TV show, rated TVG, pick, and there it is, some random TV shows. And we can look over here at the watcher and we can see that the input was TV show, and filtered titles has 46 items on it. Looks great. And what we did over here is we picked 5 items randomly from this list right here. Let's try it one more time with some different selections just in case. So let's pick movie and let's pick PG-13 and pick. All right, so here's our filtered titles list again. There are 266 items on it this time. And Lord of the Rings, some of these look familiar, so they look pretty good. And then if we look over here, we have our 5 randomly chosen titles. So that's it. So let's look at it one more time. What did we do? Well, we considered that the information that the function needs to run is probably the information it gets from these pull-down menus. So there was the type and the rating. So we noticed that in the onEvent block, we take our variable type and we get the text from the type dropdown. We take the rating input variable and get the text from the rating dropdown. So in our function down here, we decided to set some parameters, the type input and the rating input, and then those can be used inside the function. So since we added those parameters, they're required in order to run the function. So when we call the function up here, we call search type list, and in the parentheses we put the type input and the rating input. And just like when we passed the paintbrush and the paints to the prisoner inside the cell, we are passing into this function the type input and the rating input. Then the function can use those things like the prisoner did with the paint and the brush. This function doesn't return anything, but we could throw something in So let's just show text, and what we could do is a console.log. Console.log is a great way to debug and test if things are working the way you'd like. So inside this console.log, I am going to run my function. I'll paste that in there. The semicolon does not belong there. It actually belongs here. And then what I'm going to do in my function here is I'm going to set a return. I'm going to say return output, so that it returns the value of the variable output, and hopefully it will print that information to my console.log right here. I'll show you with the blocks. So I added console.log, and inside the parentheses it's going to run the function passing it these two pieces of data, and then the function is hopefully going to return the variable output. And that variable output will be what is printed to the console. Okay, let's give it a try. Pick. Yes, it worked. There it is. So, okay folks, I hope this helped a little bit. And of course, please shoot me an email if you have any questions or if you're still feeling stuck on this one. Thanks folks. See you soon.